Hey everybody, welcome to another video. It's your English teacher Mohammed, and in this lesson, I actually wanted to go over some very common greetings that the majority of non-native English speakers don't know or don't understand. I know in the title I put like more than 67% of you don't understand this. I think my argument for putting such a number is from my own personal experience, but also I do have some data to back this up. If we look at the um, the kind of proficiency levels in general, we can see that um, most regions are in the sort of low to very low category. So this is from like a survey of English proficiency, and even like Europe and Asia, they have like moderate levels. So we can say that probably they're around the B2 level, and everyone else are probably B1 or less, probably, A2, B1 level. In my experience, I found that anyone B2 or lower are really not going to know these like simple greetings, these simple expressions that a lot of native speakers will use. But in my teaching experience, a lot of English learners don't know. So let's talk about what those greetings are. So it's so common when usually when I have a lesson with a student and I will say, hey, what have you been up to? And usually I get this kind of response, huh? Right. Or how's it going lately? You know, and what have you been up to lately? And they seem to always get confused. And I want to kind of go through those expressions and go through what they actually mean. All right. So the first one that I've mentioned, right? Let's move my face all the way up there. Right. So let's look at the first one. What what have you been up to? Been up to? And typically it's this bit that trips people up. The up to. What's up? Why am I using up, right? Well, what does that mean? Right. And also it's important to note that usually this is will get contracted to what have you been up to? What have you been up to? So I won't say what have you been up to, although I could do that, but maybe I might. It depends on how fast I'm speaking. But if I'm speaking quite fast, what have you been up to lately? Or what have you been up to? But if it was like, if it was a slow pace, I might say, oh, well, what have you been up to? I might say that, but it's unlikely. I'm more likely to say, what have you been up to? So what has this been up to? What's up to? Right. Essentially, this means what are you doing? Yeah. So if we just use it, it means what have you been doing? What have you? Maybe I'll just go back, undo. Yeah. So what have you been doing? So it's a way of asking, you know, what activities have you been doing? Yeah, essentially. Yeah, what did you do? Yeah, what have you been up to? This is kind of like, I guess you can consider it a phrasal verb, right? Um, but yeah, but to be honest, like you might have even heard things like "What's up?" "What's up?" Right? Um, so what's up? So it means kind of like what's happening, right? So it means like what's happening. So, but these are so common, like what's up? Um, what have you been doing? Have you been, what have you been up to? So those are very, very common, and that's okay. And at the end of this video, we're going to look at some actual examples on YouTube about these expressions. But let's go to the next one. So the next one I want to talk about is how's it going? Yeah, how's it going? And notice here that usually I'm going to be contracting my, the question word with the verb, right? I'm not going to be, saying how is it going, or what have you been up to. I'm usually going to contract it, yeah. And again, how's it going is essentially how are you, right? So, how's it going? How are you? Right? I think for maybe for German speakers, this is obvious because they have the same expression in German, but for the rest of us, or I guess for some European languages, French, Italian, this expression makes sense, but for a lot of others, other languages, they don't necessarily say how's it going. They don't have that kind of expression for how are you, because other cultures they might say have you eaten yet, or similar expressions for to ask how you are. So that this is probably why this kind of question probably trips a lot of people, especially if you're from China or Russia. So this kind of can trip you. And then the next one is, well, how is it going? And then how have you been? Yeah. So again, it's so how have you been? Again, what I want to also demonstrate is that these kind of questions are going to be more common than how are you today or how are you? Like that's, oh, of course, we can also ask how are you? How but how have you been? How's it going? What have you been up to? These are far, far, far more common than how are you? And I think we'll do a little test on Youglish to kind of prove how more, which of these are expressions are more common than the other, just to kind of demonstrate with hard numbers. But yeah, how have you been? Again, it's just asking how are you, right? It's the same. So you know, and you also have to get used to the sort of rhythm of the how's it going, how have you been, how so you have to kind of start to hear the and this at the end of these sort of question words, how's it going, how have you been, what have you been up to, what have you been up to. And those is very important to kind of catch that, because you're not going to hear how is it going, how have you been, what have you been up to. You're not going to hear that. You're going to hear the sort of combined flowing form of the language, right? So it's really important to do that. So those were like some of the most common expressions that a lot of non-native English speakers don't know. But let's look at Youglish, which has become somewhat of my most favorite website to kind of look at. And we will actually see how common these expressions are. Now, obviously, in a YouTube video, maybe these questions might not be common, but let's have a look, right? So let's compare. How are you? And see how many come up, right? So, right, let's have a look. So we can see here, let's have a look. I'm just going to pause this. Right. So we can see that there were 67,080 examples of how are you, right? But let's look at the how have you been, because that's going to be, let's see if that's going to be more common. 67,000. Okay. So a bit less common, 43 examples. But of course, because yeah, and how's it going? Right. But I'm going to go back through these examples so we can actually see 2,971. Right. So it's clear from here that these examples are these variations are not as common as sort of standard how are you, right? But it's worth knowing because they are still common. What have you been up to? I think this is hopefully going to be more common to at least prove my point. Oh, well, what have you been up to? Yeah. So you're gonna more likely hear it in conversations, right? Probably that's why it doesn't come up so often in YouTube videos, right? But let's now have a look at these examples in context, right? And see, you know, let's see these expressions in context so that you can kind of see how native speakers tend to use them. So I'm just going to go back a little bit, right?
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good.
What have you been up to lately?
So notice how here she first asks, "How are you?" Right? Then she asks what he's been doing, but he doesn't say, "What have you been doing?" She says, "What have you been up to lately?" And that's also another point as well. We like to add little things like lately or recently. Yeah. So those are another one. That's another one. That's another sort of variation on top of this, right? Yeah.
Oh, not much. Just went to see my family yesterday.
So notice how he answers with an action of what he's done. So what have you been up to? This is asking about actions that you've done recently. And or at least kind of like if there's no lately, then it would be some in the past sort of few weeks, we're not asking what have you been doing this past year. We're just kind of asking in these past few weeks or even few days, what sort of things have you been doing? That's even without lately or recently, we would be kind of asking about just the past few weeks, right? Or since our last meeting, right? So let's have a look at another example.
How's it going? Maybe you're catching up with...
There you go.
And you can be a little bit casual and you could say, "G'day, how's it going?" Maybe you're catching up with some friends as well. "G'day guys, how's it going? What have you been up to?"
How's it going? So as always, we're asking, how's it going? It's the same as how are you? And then you will ask what they're doing. What have you been up to? Right.
Nothing with girl. Wow, all my friends have done so much this year. Am I doing nothing with my life? That's so cool.
So, Ralph, what have you been up to? It's been a year. You must have done so much.
Yeah.
So here, this is, I guess, they're meeting from, after a long, long time without seeing each other. So here, she is asking, what has he been doing in this past year? And we know that because she kind of said, it's been over a year. You must have done so much, right?
Ralph, what have you been up to? It's been a year. You must have done so much.
So really here she is asking like maybe to give a summary of the whole year, So it's what have you been up to? It's been a year. You must have done so much. So here she's asking for a kind of summary for some of the highlights of the previous year, So that's an example, right? Let's look at the other ones. How's it going? Yeah. Right. It's always good to see the context of these things.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Lehman. Today we're going to talk about ADD and actually why I care about it, why I care about it so much. So I am a child psychiatrist by training, and 50% of the kids that I see in my practice, or people we've actually seen in Amen clinics, have ADD of one form or another. But
I guess this is not a relevant example, but we'll go to the next one, right? Next, yeah, that doesn't seem to be relevant.
Awesome, man. How's it gonna shoot? I love getting.
And I asked, "How's it going for you in the department?" I even asked another professor.
Yeah, so how's it going is like, again, also asking, what's the situation like? So that's another meaning, for that. How's it going? And how have you been? Let's look at that one just to finish off the video. How have you been? Right. Oh, okay. So let's have a look.
Hey man, good to see you. How you been? I got you. Good, man. Good, man. Real pleasure.
Yeah. So obviously you'll ask that. So saying how are you? Have you been? Yeah, it's more common for us to use sort of like the perfect tense as well, rather than just a simple "How are
Good to
you?"
see
Yeah.
you. Good to see you. How you been? How you been, man?
There's definitely a more casual feeling between, it's, I would say it's more casual to say "How have you been?" or it's more intimate even. Like it feels like you're closer, like you're more like friends when you're asking "How have you been?" Yeah.
Good to see you. How have you been? Oh,
That's the same one.
Or text distant friends saying, "Hey, how have you been? I haven't seen you in forever."
So obviously here again we use that with friends, you see, which is a good demonstration there. So we'll leave it there. So essentially, to summarize again, what have you been up to? Usually this will be asked after the "How are you?" question, and we want to know what you've been doing basically. And so that's the first one. And of course there's variations of the "How are you?", which is "How's it going?" "Have you been?" "How have you been?" is more like, I guess, between friends, is more casual, right? So "How are you?" is going to sound a bit more formal. But anyways, those were the three simple greetings that a lot of non-native English speakers don't know. If you found this video useful, then you can like and subscribe. And I'm bringing out more new videos every day, right? So every day there's going to be videos about the IELTS exam, other aspects of the English language, right? Interesting vocabulary, or a lot of idioms and stuff. If you have any questions at all about the English language, right, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll definitely respond to them. And otherwise, yeah, again, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.